To the iMapp webinar. This is Maggie. I'm one of the 4 full-time trainers at the association. I'm going to be taking you through iMapp today. iMapp is already on your gateway, so remember, it's really easy to just log into your gateway and click on those products. They're single sign-on, so you just have to remember one login as opposed to keeping track of various logins. So your login, or your gateway login, I should say, is on our website. By the way, newly redesigned if you haven't noticed, but you have a link up at the top. Also, you have these scrolling banners, and there's an icon in here, there we go, for the Miami Gateway as well, and beneath that scrolling banner you have the Miami Gateway on the left. So you can choose any of those, click on it, log in with your license and password, and once the gateway loads, you'll notice that usually right around RPR and Realist you'll find iMapp. So they're always kind of grouped together because these are your 3 main tax roll programs. So when you are seeking tax roll information, you have RPR, iMapp, and Realist. Also, we have Remind, which we're teaching this product a lot this month because you have all been upgraded. So every member of Miami Association of Realtors has been upgraded to Remind Pro. Remind has our MLS data, we're sharing it with them, and they also have MLS information. So that's another resource for you for tax and MLS. The reason that we have options for you is because each of them does something a little unique or different that maybe the others don't do. And I get asked often why we have options and what the main differences are. So of the 4 that I mentioned, RPR, iMapp, Realist, and Remind, all of them allow you to print mailing labels. The extent or how many mailing labels you can print depends on the product. Of the 4, iMapp is the only one that doesn't really have a limit, a monthly limit on how many you can print, and neither does Remind, but iMapp does cap you at 5,000 results or 5,000 labels at a time, which simply means you would just have to go in, run your search a little differently and pull another set. But there's not really a limit to how many times you can do that in iMapp and Remind. Whereas Realist does limit you to 2,000 a month, and then RPR is limiting you to 4,000 a month. Other than that, another main difference between all of these products is the report features. iMapp is very fast, it's quick to give you your results. However, it doesn't really have a consumer-friendly report. Everything you see on iMapp can be downloaded as a PDF, and I'll go ahead and point all of that out as we go through iMapp. But Realist, RPR are the ones that have reports. Remind also has some reports built into it, but the one that has the most reports with the most data and demographics in terms of who lives in that area, what do they do, what's their level of education, that's all in RPR. So iMapp is great when you're looking for information and you're looking for it quickly. It is geared very much toward the realtor, but you can always take that and insert it into your reports from your preferred platforms. So let's go ahead and get started and jump into iMapp. Once you see it on your gateway, you can just click on it and go. And while that's loading, I want to point out to you that it is in Matrix. Alright, so iMapp is built into Matrix, so I just wanted to point out really quickly that you have it linked across the top in the floating menu bar. You also have it in the widget with external links. It's usually in the bottom half, and it is also built into a listing. So I'm just gonna click on a random listing. And you'll notice there's a blue circle with a white eye. Anytime you see a blue circle with a white eye, that is a link to iMapp, and you can go ahead and click on it and see that property's information as it appears in iMapp. So I just wanted to point out that it is linked in a few different places in Matrix. Alright, once you are in iMapp, there are 3 different searches that you can run. You have your tax search, which is self-explanatory. You have your MLS search, which, to be honest, if you needed to search the MLS, you're going to search the MLS through Matrix. But there is one specific feature that it has built in here that you don't have anywhere else that I always like to point out to you, and that is expired, not relisted. So for those of you that are interested in farming expired listings, this is nice because you already know that whatever you're pulling in that moment hasn't been relisted yet. Now, keep in mind that if I pull a list today and I decide to do something about that list of results tomorrow, some of those may already be in the MLS. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes the turnaround is very quick. And then we have foreclosure searches. Again, if you're looking to farm those foreclosure properties, either because you're looking for new listings and so you want to approach these owners to see if they'd like to sell, or maybe you have a buyer, an investor who is looking to purchase foreclosure properties. So you can use this either to farm for new listings or find those properties for your potential investor. Now, in the tax search, I'm going to go ahead and show you what happens when you pull up a specific property and just kind of point out the information that they provide. And then I'll go ahead and show you how you can use the tax search to do a little bit of farming. So in the tax search, if you notice, always make sure that of the 3 tabs, you are in the correct tab based on the search you'd like to run in that moment. And then in the search area, just make sure that you have selected the correct county. iMapp is specific to Florida, so all the counties that are provided there are from Florida. Remind is nationwide, Realist is just Florida, and RPR is nationwide. So you have 2 that are statewide and you have 2 that are nationwide. So we're going to make sure that we're in the correct county, and you have search fields, search type, which is usually associated with value, things like equal to, greater than, less than, and then the search value is the actual criteria. If at any point in time there's something you want to add to your search and you're not seeing it here, you can pick any of the search fields you are not going to use, click on it, and there is an entire menu of options that you can use. So pick something you don't need, switch it to a field that you do need so that you can include it in your search. I'm going to go ahead and use the second row, which says property address contains. I'm going to leave that contains there, and I'm going to go ahead and type in an address. So this is a single family home. I had used it as an example for something else, so I'm going to go ahead and use it here. And I can go ahead, plug in the address, and click on Start Search. All right, here is the property tax info for that single family home. I have the parcel ID. It is hyperlinked. Anytime you see something in blue and underlined, it is a hyperlink in iMapp. I can go ahead, click on it, and it's going to open up that property's information in the Miami-Dade County Property Appraiser website. Okay. So I have all of the property information on the left. I have a small map with some activity, which you can go ahead and select or deselect right beneath the map. Beneath that, I have the value information going all the way back to 2015. There's also a link to the county tax collector. If they had defaulted or hadn't paid their property taxes, you would see a notification right here letting you know. There's sales information. So the last recorded sale was in January of 2020, and it was for $273,750. The building information, the assigned schools, again hyperlinked, so I can go ahead and click on any of those hyperlinks. And then I have flood zone information at the bottom, and links to FEMA and whatnot. Now on the right hand side, because this property had been in the MLS, right above property tax, I have the MLS listing info, and I can actually click and see the information that was included in the listing for this property. If it had been listed multiple times, you would be able to go ahead and jump around between those where it says listing history. Okay, so it's been listed a few times, and I can go ahead and, if I wanted to see the other listings, click and see those previous listings. Okay, so and the pictures are included, which is nice. So I can see that this listing, which sold in February of 2018, then sold again in January of 2020. So it was probably a flip. It looks a little different. So it's nice to be able to see those differences. You can also see or find comparables. So continuing with these menu options on the right hand side, I can click on Find Comparables, and I already have my criteria set right down here. where it says comparison criteria. If you don't get results, you can always alter this. So I can say, show me the sales in the last year, and I can click on update criteria and see if anything pops up. Also, you can set your criteria and set it as a default so that every time you click on find comparables, it's in here. So you've got the option of finding comparables, and you can download this information, email this page, save this page as a PDF, or print this page. If you wanted to include this in a report that you created in Matrix or in RPR, because this isn't a full listing presentation, this isn't a full CMA, this isn't a full comparative market analysis, I can go ahead and take this PDF, save it, and insert it into Matrix or RPR. Each of those systems allows you to upload your own PDFs, and conveniently here it's formatted already as a PDF. All right, after your comparables, you have some residential MLS stats, so statistics based on the MLS, and you have your options. So you've got a nice little bar graph, but then if you look right beneath that legend for that bar graph, you can compare new versus sold. You can look at all sales, sold listings, and the inventory. So you've got some stats being pulled here. You also beneath that have some demographics. All right, things like rent versus own, education, occupation, whatnot. And you can select the radius or how far out to go to get that information. So this is based on what's going on within a mile of that property. You then have a link to Bing Maps, Google Driving Directions, and Google Maps. And then you have RPR. So if you are someone who prefers RPR for certain reports, you can do your research here, download those PDFs, and then really quickly click on RPR property details and jump into RPR and continue with your process. For most of these pages or sections, again, you have the option to email the page, save that as a PDF, or print it, which is nice. So I'm going to go back to the property tax information right up here. So again, the basic setup for this is the property tax information. This is what always opens up, but using these menu options on the right hand side, I can jump into other features and other details. Now, because I'm here back on the tax information, I have some settings for this map. I can change the view. I can pan the map so I can move it over. I can save the map. And then right beneath that, I have report sections. So anytime you see report sections, what it allows you to do is each of these boxes has an X. And sometimes there's information that I want to share with my customer, and sometimes there's information I might not want to include. You can actually click on the X and remove it. For example, maybe I don't need them to see this assigned school information. It's gone, and then I can go ahead and email the page or save the PDF. But in the future, if I wanted it back, here where it says show report sections, I can go ahead and mark that and bring it back. So basically, anytime you see an X, that means you're allowed to remove it in that moment, and then you can bring it back by checking it off wherever it says show report sections or report sections. So I've had that happen a lot. I've actually had quite a few messages and calls. Maggie, I lost this, it was there, and now it's gone, and I don't know how to get it back. That's how you get it back. The other place where it happens is in the comparable section. There might be certain things that are included here that you do not want to confuse your customer with. You can remove them by clicking on the X, and where it says show report sections, you can bring them back. Okay? I'm going to go back up to the top and click on new search. And now I want to show you how you can use iMapp to do some farming and prospecting. So for the tax search, you can use this to farm and prospect, let's say owner occupied, yes and no, which is usually most convenient to run that. It's most convenient to run that search for condos. Maybe I want to tackle a complex, a condo complex, and I want to target all of those owner occupied no. Because if the owner isn't occupying the property or isn't living there, it's most likely being rented. So a prime example of that would be, let's say I have a listing in the Access Towers. I can go ahead and target those owner occupied no, which are probably rented, and say, hey, I have a listing. Wouldn't you like to just continue living where you're renting but save money? Because we all know statistically you save money if you buy instead of rent for prolonged periods of time. So I can do my little marketing materials and I can go ahead and I can distribute that to all those units that are not owner occupied. Now, there's no way to confirm with 100% certainty that they're being rented because rentals don't necessarily occur with the use of an agent. The owner themselves can, talk to an attorney, drop their own lease, what have you. But the likelihood is pretty high that if it's not owner occupied, it is being rented. So let's go ahead and run that example. And then I'll show you another example of how to target owners who have purchased and been at their property for 10 or more years, and maybe it's time for them to downsize. Maybe it's time for them to invest in another property, what have you. So we'll do those two different examples. There's a ton of different examples and ways you can use this. So let's go ahead, and where it says subdivision select, I'm going to go ahead and I prefer to use, I'm going to change that to subdivision input. And I want it to contain everything that says axis. Because the axis has two towers, okay? So you see how it says the axis on Brickell Condo and the axis on Brickell 2, those are the two towers. So I'm going to go ahead and click on one. And let's say I now wanted to also add in the second tower. Where it says and or, in the following row right beneath it, I'm going to say or. And I'm going to say subdivision input again. The reason that I have to switch that to or is because it is physically impossible for something to exist in two places. So anytime you want to search multiple cities, multiple zip codes, etc., you need to have multiple rows, like I'm doing right now, and you need to have each of the subsequent rows say or. So again, if I were searching in multiple zip codes, I would have 3 or 4 rows that say zip code, they would say or, and then I would list my zip codes. Those fields only allow you to enter one value at a time. So I can't just add the two towers in one field. All right, so I'm looking in both of these towers, and now I am focused on owner occupied. So I'm just going to go ahead, and the one right beneath the two subdivision rows, I'm going to switch that sale date to owner occupied. And it doesn't matter what order you do this in. You can switch any of these fields, but I'm going to say owner occupied no. And I'm going to click on start search. So I have, if you notice, 518 results, 518 units that are owner occupied no. Some of these may already be in the MLS. So the first thing that you need to do is where it says results not sorted, you need to switch that to MLS status ascending, so that if it is in the MLS, it's at the top of my list so I can get rid of it. So I'm going to go ahead and say MLS status ascending. I'm going to give it a second. There we go. You see all of these results with a green flag or green banner? Those are all active. And so of those 500 and something results, I have 51 that are active, and I have 2 more that are pending. Okay? Those 53 properties, I shouldn't be contacting them. It goes against the code of ethics. They already have an agent. So I need to remove these. And unfortunately, the only way to do this is to remove them one by one. There is nothing you can do in your search with your search values. Sorry, I accidentally clicked on a property. With your search values to go ahead and remove this from the start. So I would have to sit here and I would have to remove all of these properties. So of the 500 and something, I've got about 50, 55 properties that are not viable options. That still leaves me with another 450 properties that I can print mailing labels for and I can send marketing materials to. So I would go ahead and I would remove all of these, and you have a few options. You can either take these results and download them, because some people are using exterior products that allow them to market or get contact information. So I can export this and import it into my other products. I don't know what those are exactly, but I do know that none of our products do that importing feature, but Remind Pro does give you contact information, so that's convenient. Now, I go ahead and I remove all of these and I finish removing them. Let's pretend I removed all of these. When you're done removing them, you have to commit those changes, and it's going to gray out those properties. So see how now they're deactivated? The next step would be I can download the results. So as I mentioned, you can download them so you can then import them into another product or system you might be using where you can do something with that information. I can create mailing labels. I can refine the search, which allows me to go back and change my criteria. I can save the search and I can print this page. And when I have multiple pages, that means I need to go to each page and click on print again. So just be mindful of the fact that if I wanted to print these hundreds of results, there are pages of results. I would need to go to each page and click on print on each page. So let's say I wanted to create mailing labels. I click on create mail labels. And in this situation, I am targeting possible renters. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to say occupant. And I can replace the first line. So maybe I want the first line to say future homeowner instead of current resident. I can remove duplicate results so I'm not wasting my time. I can remove, or I can only retrieve labels that have a valid zip code. You can choose your Avery label type, and you can either produce this in PDF, Word, or Excel. Obviously, PDF is usually the easiest. And I click on generate labels. I'm going to give it a second. It's downloading. There we go. So here are my labels for my 400 and something owner occupied no in the Access Towers. And now if I have a listing in those towers, I can say just listed. Look at this. Did you know that on average a person spends X amount on rent, whereas you spend X amount on a purchase? And I can pull in all those stats and do my marketing and target those 400 and something potential renters. Now, let's say I wanted to go back to those results. On the right hand side, it says browse results. I click. It's going to take me right back to that list of results. If I wanted to change my search, I can go refine this search. Maybe I just want to know how many units are in these towers. I can go ahead and leave owner occupied blank, click on start search. And by the way, the max number of results you'll see in iMapp is 5,000. So now I see there are 718 results. So of those 718, we had 500 and something that were owner occupied no, which means that the vast majority of the units in those towers are not owner occupied. So it's interesting to see that and to kind of analyze the market that way. So again, if you download the results, it downloads as a CSV, which is an Excel. It's an Excel friendly document. We've already created mailing labels. I can refine this search, so that takes me back and I can go ahead and modify. I can save the search and I can print it. So if I save the search, really easy. All I have to do is give it a name. So I'm going to say Access Towers, because this is just all of the Access Towers. Save the search. It lets me know the search has been saved. I click OK. The next time I come in here, instead of having to fill all of this out again, I can just go and right above the county, it says My Save Searches. I can hover and then I would see all of my saved searches. So I can go ahead, this is the search I just saved with you today. I can click on it, it'll fill everything out. I click on start search, get my results. So you can save your searches as many as you'd like. If at any point in time you wanted to delete a search, each of the searches that you save has an X. You click on the X, confirm, and it'll delete. So it's really easy to manage those. Now in tax search, there's one other example I wanted to show you, and that's how to target owners that have been at their property, let's say 10 to 12 years. So I can do this for, let's say, single family in Coral Gables. What you would do is, I would specify, in this situation, I'm saying a city. So maybe instead of zip code, I can change to property city. And I can say Coral Gables. And where it says property use code, I'm going to specify single family. Otherwise, it's going to give me information for every property that exists in the city of Coral Gables. Now, I want to target properties that were purchased 10 to 12 years ago and haven't had a sale since. So 10 to 12 years ago puts us at 2010 to 2012. So what I'm going to do is I have sale date. I'm going to change the second one, or the row beneath it, to say sale date. Sale date greater than or equal to, and I'm going to say greater than or equal to 0101. 10 years ago puts us at 2010. And then sale date equal to, I'm going to change that equal to less than or equal to, and I'm going to just target 2010. So I'm going to put 12/31/2010. So I'm asking the system for single family homes in Coral Gables that sold back in 2010 and haven't had a sale since. In 10 years, we know statistically people move every 7 to 10 years in South Florida, so maybe the kids have moved out, maybe it's time to downsize, maybe that house is paid for and they can go ahead and invest in another property and create a portfolio for themselves, whatever the case may be. But I can go ahead, click on Start Search. And again, remember that when you do get your results, I have 310 single family homes that were purchased in 2010 and haven't been sold since. So there hasn't been another sale recorded. I need to sort my results, MLS status ascending. And of those 310, I have 20 of them that are currently active. So I've got to get rid of those. That still leaves me with 290. So I still have quite a few of them. So I would remove all of these. Remember, when you remove them, you have to click on Commit Changes up at the top. Once you've committed your changes, you can then download those results, create your mailing labels, print this page, whatnot. Now, if I wanted to create mailing labels, I showed you what to do when you're targeting a renter, but in this situation, you're targeting an owner. So I would say owner address. I'm not going to replace the first line because I want it to say their name. You have your Avery label types. You click on Generate Labels in PDF. There we go. So now all of those owner names are there. All of those addresses are there. Notice that some of these aren't even residents of the state. Okay, I can go ahead and I can send them something and say, hey, that property that you bought 10 years ago, are you looking to rent it? Are you looking to sell it? Maybe I can entice them to list. I'm going to go back to new search. So for tax search, you can do this for your owner occupied, no for your renters. So target those owners who sold, who purchased 10 years ago. Maybe it's time for them to invest in something else. I can target, by the way, here, owner occupied out of state as well. So I had shown you how to target owner occupied yes and no, but you also have the option. Owner is a county resident, owner is a Florida resident, owner is a US resident. Okay, so you can go ahead and you can target those owners who are or aren't residents of the state or of the country. All right, let's talk about our MLS search. In MLS search, again, and when you need to search the MLS, you're always going to go to Matrix. That's where everything is, and that's where everything is done first. Remember that all information rolls out from Matrix. So when I'm searching, I'm going to search in Matrix first, but there is one specific feature that the MLS search has here that no other product has, and that's the expired, not relisted. So if I'm farming expireds, one of the comments I hear often is, yeah, but I'm farming expireds and by the next day they're listed again. I can go ahead and target things that expired, let's say in the last year, or that expired in the last 6 months of 2019 but haven't relisted yet. That way I know that I don't have to worry about it being listed the next day. If I farm expired, not relisted in the last month up until yesterday, I'm going to be including properties that ultimately are going to get relisted because there's a quick turnaround. So let's go ahead and run an example. Where it says listing status equal to, you're going to select the listing status that is expired, not relisted. Where it says property type equal to, you can select your property type. So I'm going to go ahead and select condo. And then I'm going to use zip code. I'm going to use 3 different zip codes. So I'm going to scroll down. And I already know I'm going to use 3 zip codes. So I'm going to select 3 rows and have them say zip code. And I already know that I need the second and third zip code to say or. Again, the way to remember this is a property cannot exist in 3 zip codes at once. It cannot exist in one and the other. It can exist in one or the other. So anytime you're using multiple zip codes, multiple cities, multiple locations, you need to make sure that on the left-hand side, you change it to or it's going to tell you you have no results. I'm going to use zip code 33129, 33130, 33131. And I'm not going to target expired, not relisted from January to now. I'm going to target expired, not relisted from January, February, March. And I'm not even going to touch April because we just finished April. So let's just say January, February, and March. Where it says, I can pick any of these, and I'm going to switch it to something called expired date. And I'm going to say greater than or equal to 01/01/2020. But I want to end in March. So I'm going to change yet another one to expired dates. And this one I'm going to say less than or equal to. Just a tip, when you're using date ranges, the first row always says greater than or equal to or greater than. The second row always says less than or equal to or less than. And I'm going to put here 03/31/2020. So I am specifically targeting condos that expired and didn't relist in those 3 zip codes between January and March. So January, February, March. So I'm being very specific. I'm not touching April because those might be relisted. We just finished April last week. So to avoid that frustration of trying to target and finding out that they've already been relisted, I'm leaving April out of it. I click on Start Search. And I have 117 condos. 117 that expired and didn't relist. And they expired in January, February, and March of this year. So it's still relatively recent. They've had time to cool off because most of these owners, the day that their listing expires, they're bombarded with phone calls and emails, and they get so many messages and phone calls that they get frustrated sometimes. So now they've had like a cool down period, and maybe you can reapproach. So these are 117. And let's say, I know sometimes people don't necessarily see how this could be beneficial, but let's say you send out 117 mailers and 10% of them contact you. 10%, let's just say 100. 10% of 100 is 10. Now, all 10 of them might not list with you, but let's say half of them list with you. Let's say 20% of those 10 list with you. That's 2 listings from sending out mailers, from trying to communicate with those 117. So you can print mailing labels, create mail labels, and you are wanting to communicate with the owner, so it's always going to be owner at owner address, not necessarily at the property. They might not live there. And then I would generate my labels. And now I have 117 properties that I'm tackling that were listed, so they wanted to sell, but they expired. They might be potential listings for me. All right. I'm going to go back, and remember, you can save this. So you can go ahead and save that so that you don't have to constantly worry. In fact, we all know our webinars are edited and uploaded, but if you wanted to snap a picture or do a screenshot of this so that you can then manipulate it to your areas or your markets, go ahead and do so. I am going to post this. It should be posted on YouTube and Miami Realtors Live by end of day tomorrow, assuming I don't get pulled into other meetings and whatnot, but usually within a day or two, it's up. But you can screenshot this, and maybe those aren't your zip codes, and maybe you work single family, but you know what the order is, and you can go ahead and change that up. All right, the last one that I have to show you, or that I'd like to show you, is your foreclosure search. So it's yet another option for you to farm and prospect foreclosures. What you would do here is you're targeting properties that have been served with the list pendants, which is the initiation or the start of the foreclosure process. So where it says case number, I would switch that to list pendants and say yes. I'm interested in those properties that have received this list pendants, or that this list pendants was filed for them. You can specify property zip codes. You can specify cities. Let's say I'm going to specify city. So let's do property city. Starts with, let's do Miami Lakes. And then, or property city, Hialeah. And for property type or property use code, let's say single family, which is at the top, I think. Yeah. So let's say single family. And actually, property use code is one of the few fields in iMapp that lets you check off multiple. So you could do single family and condo. You can, scroll through. If you don't like property use code, you have to specify something though, because if not, you're going to get everything that went into foreclosure in those areas. Now, I also should specify a date. So where it says filing date, I'm going to say the last year. So let's say 05/01/2019. So filing date greater than or equal to anything that has filed in the last year. We don't recommend that you go out more than a year, because at that point they're involved with lawyers and the process has been ongoing, and it kind of becomes like this never-ending cycle. So we recommend targeting maybe, or looking and farming the last 6 months to the last year. So I'm going to go ahead and say the last year and click on Start Search. I have 193 single family homes in Hialeah and Miami Lakes that were or have a list pendants on file, and that list pendants was filed May 1st or from May 1st onward, so in the last year. Now for each of these, you have the case information. It's hyperlinked. You can click, see that case information or those documents. You do see if the attorney is available, you'll see it. Sorry. If available, if available, attorney information is provided. You see who the plaintiff is. You see who the defendants are, which would be the owners. I'm trying to see if there's one with an attorney so I can show you what that looks like, but I'm not seeing. They're all saying not provided, or they're blank. Some of these are active, so be mindful. This is another search. You don't have to worry about this with the expired not relisted, but with foreclosures, you do need to do sort MLS status ascending, because some of these are already active. So of those 193, there are 12 of them that are already active. So they're already in the MLS. So I can get rid of those. And again, I can print those mailing labels. I can download these results, do what I need to do. Now just be mindful and be respectful and sensitive of the fact that most people, when they are in the process of foreclosure, might not respond well if you let them know that you are aware of that. So I would approach these as I would approach any other potential listing. Hey, I'm a realtor. I work in this area. If you need anything or interested in selling, here's my information. If you let them know up front that you are aware that they're in foreclosure, sometimes people can get defensive, which is understandable. It's a sensitive situation. So just, be aware of that. Remember to remove those actives. Remember to commit those changes. Okay? And then you can print your mailing labels or download your results. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 different types of searches. We know how to print mailing labels. We know how to save searches. Are there any questions? All right, well, if you guys don't have any other questions or suggestions, I made sure to leave all of my contact information in the chat. In case you didn't see it or you can't find it, my email is maggie@miamire.com. All right, thank you so much for attending the webinar. Stay safe, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.